Hello and welcome to the Fishing Guide Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Wiegmann, and we have a special guest this week.
Great to be here.
One of my oldest friends, and so we had him come in. This is probably the only time he's not working. So
it's too cold to work.
Too cold to work.
What is it? 18 degrees out there right now?
It is really cold.
I don't fish when it's 18. I used to when I was young.
We're with Striper Guide Ed Chapko, and he guides on Beaver Lake.
Yes, sir.
And so we're going to ask him all kinds of questions. We're going to find out all about striper fishing, and we're going to have him give us some tips on catching them, and give us some knowledge about hiring a guide so to go out and go striper fishing. Oh. Ed, tell us how long have you known me?
Wow, it's getting close to 3 decades.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 26, 27 years.
Yeah, I must have started guiding when I was 4 because I'm only 30.
I was 9.
Yeah, that's right.
But somehow you're older than I am. So
somehow.
I don't know how that works, but we're good.
So tell them, you've been a guide since when? When did you start guiding for stripers on Beaver Lake?
Well, it was back in 1991.
Wow. Yeah. Man, that's a long time ago.
Got into it slowly. I'm a printer by trade.
Right.
Yep. And I had started back in 1991 here on Beaver Lake, but I fished Lake Texoma for like 9 years. And then we would vacation over here on Beaver Lake. And we just fell in love with it. And I walked into on vacation, we walked into a print shop at Roark Printing. And yes, they said, we're going to need you. We'll move you over here. And here I am, 30 years later.
So you guide full-time. You're full-time striper guide. Mm-hmm. And there's not as many full-time striper guides. There's a lot of part-time striper guides or just weekend guides that go out there. But you do it full-time. You've done it full-time for how long?
Let's see. I got laid off at down in Springdale at a plant. They had been bought out by a conglomerate up in Missouri, and they just took all the
printers.
Well, they took all the accounts, and that was it. The print shop closed shop. 125 people.
Wow,
gone. So then I said, Lord, this is it. I'm not looking for another printing job.
Right.
Just went out. And that was around 2000.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing. So tell us what's the normal day for striper guys? What you probably should do is kind of break it into seasons, because actually as the seasons go, every day is not the same. Kind of season-wise, it kind of is, right?
Well, preparation is the key. It's different on the seasons. I get out there and get the bait for the striper, gizzard shad usually 8 to 10 inches, and it does take some effort to get out there and do that on a daily basis. You got to fight weather conditions. Right. Are they going to be up shallow? Are they deeper? Are they going to be flipping? Or you got to have to get into some water where you can actually see them to get on them. But my favorite way of catching the fish is actually at night trolling with downriggers.
Right. That's a summer thing, though.
That's a summer thing. And if you're new to the sport and you really want to get your kids or your grandpa in on some of these fish, I usually funnel them to the summer.
Right.
Yeah.
Better weather,
more consistent. The fish are on the lower end of the lake, and they're a little easier to find and to catch.
Right. So we'll start with spring. So as spring, and that we'll talk about. Well, maybe we should talk about winter, because the end of winter. Yeah, we're in winter. Tell us about winter fishing for stripers. That's not a nighttime thing, is it?
You know what? I've tried it when I was younger, and it's flat out it's phenomenal.
Right.
But it's brutal on the body. Usually then I am using the big bait.
Live baits.
Even when the water temp's around 40 degrees. If I would have gone out at night and get in the backs of some of these creeks when the fish are in there. Right. Usually by daylight, the stripers are migrating out of those backs of the creeks in the wintertime. Very rarely will they stay in there very long.
Right.
It gets light about 7:30. They're usually done by 8:30 anyway.
Right.
They're already moving out. But at night, see, they're already in there. They're in there in the middle of the night. So the big bait is good for that. But after the sun comes up, you want to go to a smaller bait usually.
Like brooders?
Brooders, small baby gizzards, threadfin, if you can get them, and if you can keep them alive, they work real well.
Right. So Main Lake is Main Lake. The old river channel is where the shad are hanging out.
Usually it's all about water temp. Now, we're going to be getting a shad kill, I think, here maybe next week if we don't get some warmer weather. But we were blessed this year with 53-degree water last time I went out. Right. Which was, what?
A couple days ago.
December 30th?
31st, 30th, yep.
Yeah, it's phenomenal out there right now.
Right. So that takes us into spring. And spring, of course, you're probably gone to big baits because those stripers are feeding up. And even though they typically, and most of the biologists say that the stripers don't reproduce on Beaver Lake, which is a whole different story. We'll have to have a biologist come in. So what happens in the spring? How are you taking people out fishing in the spring?
In the spring, you got weather patterns that can, kind of mess you up. Right. Fronts come through, but we catch our largest fish from March, April. The stripers are at their heaviest. They're full of eggs. They're just heavy. They feed, and they just keep feeding, and they're just solid fish. They just look like pigs out there. And during that time, yes, I'm using live bait. And of course, we're throwing some spoons. We're throwing some top waters, and actually once in a while, the birds will help us locate the stripers. Right, the gulls. The gulls will be coming down and feeding on some of that stuff that's still dying. But once you get out there and you grab your shad for the trips, you want to get some of these shad that are like that. Right. If you don't, chances are catching a big fish they're less. Right. Also, when you're using shad this big, you don't catch the 20 and 30-inch stripers on those. Right. So they'll chase those big baits around, and it's kind of exciting seeing that. Right. But they don't get it. They don't bite it.
Takes a big fish.
It takes a big fish, and that's what I prefer to catch. I key in on the trophies.
And you talked a little bit about summer fishing for them and actually fishing at night. But you actually meet your customers while it's still light, so they can walk around the boat and get familiar with it.
We take them on a little boat ride, and about an hour before dark usually, and that is when most of the people are getting off the lake. They've been on the water all day long. They're hot. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They want to get off the water. And that's about when I decide to go out.
Right. So how are you? Safer. What are you fishing? Live bait or artificial? How are you fishing for them at night?
At night, I am using my downriggers, and I'll fish anywhere from 30 to 110 feet. I've caught them that deep.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty deep. I don't even have that much line on my poles.
You better check your downrigger line too, because I've lost a lot of balls because that wire just stays on that spool and it just stays spooled up. But then when you get down deeper, you start getting into some kinks. So usually change that wire out every other year.
And Beaver Lake, if you haven't been here, actually a reservoir is part of the White River chain, and it was flooded back somewhere in the 70s, and so late 70s, and so they left a lot of the standing timber in there, so it can be unforgiving submerged timber.
Those fish love that submerged timber.
Yeah.
You got time for a story?
Yeah.
Oh man, this was probably about 4 years ago in the summer, and the fish were getting deeper and deeper every day. The thermocline starts to drop, so it pushes those fish down deeper and deeper and deeper. Right. So I was down around 65 feet, and bam, had a big bite and just smoking the line was coming off the reel. And that fish just was heading deeper. And that kind of gets to me because
Right.
you start seeing that line go down. You're going, oh, no, there's trees down there. And sure enough, we got over that tree. It was 110 foot,
Wow.
the tree top. Of course, I was fishing up toward the dam.
Right.
And we pulled off. The fish come off, but I still had my lure. But when I brought the lure up, there was another lure on that lure that I was using that looked just about like the lure that I had. It was just crazy.
Maybe you lost it.
That fish
You found it.
That fish just
Hungry.
He was just hanging stuff on them trees down there. It's incredible.
That's
But those are the 30
Right.
and 40 pound fish that can do that.
right. And so that takes us into the winter pattern, and you kind of touched on that earlier. So
Well, just recently.
I'm sorry, into the fall pattern.
Okay, the fall. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
fall is
a
awesome.
phenomenal time to be on Beaver Lake.
Top water.
Years ago, I used to go at night still,
Right.
and people would call at night. I go, yeah, well, you want to catch a big fish? Because that's what I do. I hunt big fish.
Right.
And you can throw rattle spots at night, catch some decent fish, but the ticket, some of that 10 and 12-inch shad,
Right.
you can't go wrong with it. You just start pulling that stuff around there at night, and all of a sudden, there's a sound back there that is just very familiar to me, but to others, they don't even know what it is. They think it's a beaver or something jumping back there.
Right.
Actually, it's a large fish trying to eat that shad, and then all of a sudden the rod goes over, and then there you go. You got a fish on.
So tell us, as a guide service, what would someone expect? I mean, if they just show up, what can they expect?
Usually, I go over that with the phone call when they book the trip.
What's some of the common questions you get?
Common questions are, well, how long are we going to be fishing for? Of course, it's always the price. How much do you charge? But my prices are real competitive. And
how many hours each trip?
I went down to 4 hours a trip. But when I do a 4-hour trip, I'm putting the people on the fish at the best time of the day that they're going to be biting.
Right.
And so, and I usually unload close to where I'm going to be fishing. I do trailer my boat everywhere I go, from the house to the lake. And with that said, I may be unloading at Hickory Creek. I may be unloading the next day up by the dam.
Right.
I just go to where the fish is going to be the best that I know.
How big a boat do you have?
It's 22-foot Predator made in Chakotah, Oklahoma.
Right. So what's the normal? How many people can you take? 15, 20?
15. No, the law doesn't. I've seen some boats out there with that many people, but yeah, no, I like 3 to 4.
3 to 4 people.
Yeah, that makes it makes a good time.
What's the
Gives you a quality trip as well, because if you're not into a lot of fish, say you get 3 fish with 4 people, somebody don't get one.
Right.
But if you get 3 fish with 2 people, that's not too bad of a day. So I like to really stay with a kind of a quality trip where 3 or 4 people is plenty.
Right. How about if you get a bigger group? Like, say you have a group of 10 people come in. Do you have other boats that you can arrange?
I call Brad Wiegmann, and he kind of helps me out every once in a while. But yeah, I have a couple of friends that do have nice striper rigs and safe, and we call them up and they help me out.
How about food and drink? What can people bring? Can they bring alcohol?
Alcohol is not a real good thing to bring. In the summertime, I kind of say, well, just keep it in moderation, but there's no reason to drink alcohol when it's cold, so I just say, no, don't bring any alcohol. Right.
So you've talked about that. Tell us about, is there any other questions that you get?
Oh, well, let's stay with the alcohol.
All right.
If you're going to come with me to fish, you might want to just bring like 1 or 2 beers per person.
Right.
Because if you get out of hand, and if you're already drunk when you come on board, the trip's going to be cut short.
Right. Okay.
That's just the way it is. I mean, yes, you can have 1 or 2, but let's not get carried away. We're only out there for a few hours, so.
All right. Any other questions that are pretty common?
Questions. Do you clean fish?
Yeah.
I stress catch and release, but I know in the summertime, it's real hard for these fish to stay alive, so they pretty much fight to the death. So we keep a lot and clean a lot of fish in the summertime.
Okay.
But right now, let's release the fish.
All right. So let's talk about the fisheries on Beaver Lake, because at one time, back in the early 90s, we were ranked in the top 4 of striper fisheries.
Something happened here in Northwest Arkansas.
A lot of people moved in.
A lot of people moved in.
500,000 moved in.
And we're feeling that right now in the lake fund for striper. I believe when we first started back in the 90s, there was probably 5-6 fish an acre,
right,
on striped bass. And today, I believe we're under 2. Just being out there and seeing that the schools aren't as big as they used to be, and not as many of them.
Right. They still pull some big fish. What was your biggest one last year?
Last year, it was right at 40 pounds.
40 pounds. Yeah. Wow, that's a big fish. 40 some inches.
Years ago, we used to catch 3 or 4 of those a year.
Right.
Even close to 50 pounds. And we've just seen that starting to
the
tank.
Right.
The amount of fish. And we've got a tremendous amount of new guides that has come onto the lake, as you well know. And once those people get on these schools, you got a big school comes into an area, and they'll stay in there a week, maybe 10 days.
Right.
But now you got 17 other guides out there that are on that school of fish, and that school of fish doesn't have a chance. They're just whacking them and getting them, pulling the fish up and out, and then cleaning them. And some people clean them 20, 22-inch fish, and that just hurts us.
What's the legal limit? They have to be 21 inches.
20 inches. And that's roughly a 2-year-old fish.
Right.
They're about 13 inches their first year, then 20.
They have a good growth rate here.
Yeah, they do.
Once they get going.
We still have that. We still have a lot of food for them.
So, what's your plan? When will you start getting fired up again? When people start calling and really getting on and booking a trip?
Those warm days in February, the phone never stops ringing. Wow. People got cabin fever, and they're ready to do some fishing. Normally, the water temp is in the low 40s then, and it's not always you're going to go out and get one, but that is the time to get out and get a big one.
Right.
If you got the patience.
A real big one.
A real big one, 35, 40 pounds.
I think I've got all my biggest ones usually in that February time.
They're there.
Yep. So that takes us to tackle time.
Tackle time.
What
are you going to show today?
Well, we're sponsored by PICO Lures. And, of course, PICO Lures has all kinds of lures, and some that you can catch stripers on. Some of their poppers are really good for
I'd like
catching.
to see the display.
Yeah, the display. Yeah. I'll have to cut that in there.
We got to get that.
We have the hats, so that's what we got today. Yes. But they have a full line of hard baits that you can catch them on, from crankbaits to square bills to the poppers, or the PICO perch, which is a lipless crankbait. So you can check them out for catching stripers, and really any kind of game fish will basically almost eat those hard baits. And the other thing that I brought was the big Regal River. Look at this monster, because we were talking about cleaning fish.
Oh, that's mine after this, right?
Yeah, of course it is. And then just to use as an example, this is a small slab sticker, Mr. Crappie. So you can see the difference in the blade is the width and basically the length of this, and then cleaning those big fish.
I have cleaned crappie with this before.
Yeah, it's a little harder.
It's tough. Get the small one.
But the larger ones. So if you want to check out Smith's Consumer Products, you can go to their website at smithproducts.com. And if you want to check out PICO Lures, you go to picolures.com. And you can find out that stuff there. If they want to find out more, and how would they get in touch with you and book a guide trip, Ed?
I have a great website that I design and keep up. It's striperguides.net.
Okay.
And you can read in it. And it's kind of funny how we started out was the seasons that we have.
Right.
I push the seasons because seasons are for people. Some people like to fish in the cold. Some
Right.
people like to fish in the summer. And we have fishing year-round here in Beaver Lake for striped bass. So just get a hold of me, striperguides.net, or call Cindy,
There you go.
479-631-3858. She'll love to talk to you. That's
Look at-
why I married her, because she loves to talk.
Yeah,
I
that's
love you, baby.
That's exactly right. You call up Cindy, will help you out. So, man, what a great show. Appreciate you coming in.
Welcome.
And, you know, I like to end my show saying, make sure you keep your hooks sharp and your lures in the water.